Hello. So, I am not an artist defined by the mediums I use or the subject matters on which I focus. My art practice is defined by the surface upon which I create. I am a pavement artist, and with my team I create immersive works of art in paint and chalk that inspire movement and play and connection between people and their surroundings. For nearly a decade, our all-women crew, Chalk Riot, has created artwork on the ground. It's the ground that inspires me because it's the ground that connects us all. It's kind of the one place that we all visit together every day from around the world, no matter what. And much to the regret of my back and my knees, I choose to create daily at the foot of cities. I believe that the ground is the most underrated canvas. Most of our works are created in ephemeral mediums that wash away with the rain, while others are created in durable paints intended to last for years. And no matter how long they last or how many feet trample on them, the act of creating on the ground is humbling and exhilarating every time. I didn't start my art career on the ground, though. My formal training and education is in costume design and theater production. And while I realized quickly after graduating that I did not want to design costumes for the rest of my life, there were elements of creating for the theater that kept pulling me back to public art, such as the simultaneous attention to extreme detail and overall vision, the desire to cultivate communal artistic experiences, and the creative challenge of altering an environment with nothing but color and shape. These are two of the first real chalk murals that I made way back in the day, many moons ago when I lived in downtown St. Louis. And while these weren't on the ground yet, this is when I got hooked. I realized that all I needed was some chalk in my backpack, and I started to travel around the world, busking, putting a hat out for my drawings. And while I was chalking on the sidewalks of Prague and LA and Perth, Australia, Germany, France, I kind of felt like Jane Goodall, like making studious observations of my findings in this cement forest. I don't know, I became really fascinated with society from this perspective. Because I also learned that there's this entire world of urbanists and city planners that work to understand a city with tracking devices and all the statistics and data that those can provide. But in my opinion, if anyone really wants to understand a city, just hang out on the curb for like 8 to 10 uninterrupted hours, and some sidewalk chalk wouldn't hurt. And I promise you that the conversations that will unfold are incredibly revealing about so many details of the neighborhood. And with each project that we participate in, it becomes increasingly clear to me that streets are for people. Streets are for art. And if we look at the world of chalk festivals, these happen all over the world. And entire city blocks are closed off to motor vehicles and become canvases for artists from around the globe to create these temporary permitted works of art. And the world of pavement art is also so much more than just chalk. And after crawling around on the ground on behalf of NGOs and big tech companies and environmental activists and small school groups of toddlers and everyone in between, I've realized that each piece of pavement art falls into one of these following categories. And those categories are placemaking and placekeeping, street safety, memorial, and protest. To me, that streets are for people. Streets are for art. And if we look at the world of chalk festivals, these happen all over the world. And entire city blocks are closed off to motor vehicles and become canvases for artists from around the globe to create these temporary permitted works of art. And the world of pavement art is also so much more than just chalk. And after crawling around on the ground on behalf of NGOs and big tech companies and environmental activists and small school groups of toddlers and everyone in between, I've realized that each piece of pavement art falls into one of these following categories, kind of based on what they accomplish. And those categories are placemaking and placekeeping, street safety, memorial, and protest. Placemaking is a relatively new term that refers to, at its best, a community-driven process of creating public sites for gathering, enjoyment, and play relaxation. And public art is one of the tools that urban planners and government agencies and architects and curators can use to create positive placemaking projects when addressing a specific collective need. For example, our team created this 350-foot-long mural in Silver Spring, Maryland in 2021. See, at the beginning of the pandemic, this storefront road it became overwhelmed with carry-out and delivery drivers for food. And the developer in the area recognized the community's needs to enjoy this road without cars. So they commissioned this mural to celebrate and identify this area as a new pedestrian-only zone. And we actually just repainted this with a new design that we finished like 2 weeks ago, so if you're in that area, go check it out. This mural is in downtown St. Louis, created by artist Ellie Bulk. And this is actually a complex data visualization that tracks the population growth and declines of a dozen river cities. This giant swath of cement becomes an educational, colorful playscape. And in my opinion, Bulk's mural is both an example of placemaking and placekeeping. Placekeeping is a term that was coined as a response to the irresponsible corporate misuse of the term placemaking. Real estate companies and developers will often use this term in an attempt to sound cool, but placemaking is about using art to build and maintain community ownership of public space. Chalk festivals, like the one I mentioned before, are a great example of placekeeping. The visual artists are accompanied by musicians and vendors and thousands of visitors, and the community can rely on it happening every year as a source of regular income and celebration and pride. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we all know that restaurants were suffering. And so Chalk Riot teamed up with the city of Tacoma Park to chalk 50 of these pieces outside of such businesses to encourage people to buy local, as well as advertising pandemic safety measures at the height of lockdown. Over the last decade or so, departments of transportation have really started to invest in colorful pavement murals. It's very exciting. And this is because when installed in tandem with strategically implemented physical barriers, this artwork can actually slow traffic, creating a visually loud reminder for drivers to be careful. This traffic calming art intervention by a Baltimore company called Graham Projects is titled Seasonal Turn. And it is the design is inspired by community input, and the colors and shapes they have direct ties to the immediate neighborhood. Our team installed this piece last year on 15th Street Northwest here in DC as part of the city's Arts in the Right-of-Way program. The design is inspired by the life and work of venerable DC artist Alma Thomas, whose historic home actually sits diagonally across the street, so a bit of placekeeping as well. And the artwork is inside of a curb extension, and these are built barriers installed by cities to slow vehicular traffic as they turn corners, therefore keeping people on sidewalks and in crosswalks safe. And the most exciting part about all of this traffic artwork is that now, for the first time, as of just a couple months ago, we know that it officially works. According to the Bloomberg Philanthropies Asphalt Art Initiative, which studied 17 different pavement art sites, they found that the rate of car crashes involving cyclists or pedestrians decreased by a whopping 50% when art was nearby, and the rate of drivers yielding to pedestrians increased by 27%. This art is literally saving lives. And it's interesting that when we create on the ground, our bodies are formed into like this most humble shape. It's really vulnerable. Our backs are to the world. We have to have a lot of trust in society. And we're generally out of the average line of sight. I can't tell you how many times my fingers or art supplies have been stepped on or rolled over. And the interesting thing is that this pose communicates that art can actually be a form of prayer, of asking, and of remembering. And when in unison with hundreds of others, this humble pose can become this beautiful display of formidable healing and strength and resilience. I was living in Napa, California in 2017 when some of the largest wildfires in recorded history blazed through. And in the aftermath, I realized that much of the burnt wood covering the valley floor could actually be used as charcoal with which to draw. So community members and I organized a massive pavement mural. The imagery depicts a phoenix rising from the literal ashes, and folks from all over the Bay Area came to create beauty from destruction, alongside ceremony facilitated by Indigenous leaders and speeches from prominent climate organizers. Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old Black woman killed in her home by police in Louisville, Kentucky in March of 2020. This 7,000 square foot mural makes her portrait so massive it's impossible to ignore. And this was created by a group in Baltimore called Future History Now. It is located in Chambers Park, Maryland. The creation of this mural was a massive community collaborative undertaking. Last year, a 5-year-old girl by the name of Allison Hart was struck and killed by a driver in a crosswalk near her home here in DC. We organized with her parents, Safe Streets advocates, and surrounding neighborhoods to host this chalk-in at the site of her crash, and in doing so reclaimed the space with color and community while also sending important messages to our city. Allie loved flowers, and so for her, we made flower stencils and people created their own chalked flower gardens in her memory. I like to think that every time we accept that our artwork will wash away, we accept the cycles of life a little more, no matter how difficult. And often linked to acts of memorial are acts of protest, our final pavement art category. In protest marches, there is this common call and response chant that goes, "Whose streets? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets." What better way to illustrate and show whose streets they are than by illustrating messages of protest directly onto the street itself, so that once the event disperses, we can have visual presence. Our movements can have presence without any of us even having to be there. During the uprisings around the murder of George Floyd, the city of DC and its hired artists installed this massive Black Lives Matter mural on 16th Street behind the White House. It served as a catalyst for hundreds of other similar installations around the world, all rooted in this common cause. And it was fascinating to witness that as each of these installations unfolded around the globe, each one seemed to become more collaborative, more creative, and more specific in its messaging than the one before it. However, not everyone supported these murals, calling them performative and not reflective of the real systemic changes needed to fight racism. Some of the murals were vandalized with anti-Black messaging, and some people threw paint all over them in an attempt to make them illegible. These challenging discussions are ongoing in cities where these murals still exist, including in DC. And the fact that these conversations continue is proof that often the creation of pavement art is often more impactful and important than the final product. Another example of chalk art and pavement art in protest is the work of Chalk Back, an international youth-led movement active in over 150 cities worldwide that's pushing to end gender-based street harassment and violence. To do so, they chalk catcalls word for word that people submit from all over the world, and they often create them even in the exact sites where they happened. And this picture is of a mass chalk-in that they held in Washington Square Park in New York City. Iconic Ukrainian artist Maria Permichenko recently had several pieces destroyed by Russian forces. When community artists caught wind of this in San Francisco, they rallied with over 100 people and breathed new life into one of her paintings that were destroyed. The title of this original work is "A Dove Has Spread Her Wings and Asks for Peace." Colorful, more vibrant, safer streets and sidewalks should be something that we're all advocating for. And the good news is, we don't need much to transform a drab piece of concrete. At minimum, all you need are a couple pieces of chalk. This is a page from our Chalk Art for Activism toolkit. Pavement art, chalk art, reminds us that change truly begins from the ground up. Thank you.